Welcome back to part 2 of my How Many Projects is Too Many mini little series. I don't think I'll do much more than the video done in this one. As you can tell, I'm looking exactly the same as part 1 because apparently I haven't talked enough today. So I feel the urge to keep talking. The first one was already over an hour. I'm hoping this one will be a bit shorter, but we'll see. I think at this point we have all learnt I like to talk, and that's okay. It's perfectly fine. So last time I shared some of the projects that I finished, some of the kind of thoughts and feelings that went on behind the desire to cast on new things and kind of working through, you know, a project and finishing it off, but also how sometimes, you know, and I think I'll touch on a bit more about that today, about how sometimes holding back on a new cast on can make it even more delightful when you finally do get to cast it on. So before I start sharing the last few projects that I've finished since I started this project in March, I want to quickly share something. I shared this on my stories earlier today. I've already finished it. I have more, but I'm not going to drink another one today. So this, I'm just going to make sure you can actually see it and it's not too shiny. So it's called LNP, which stands for lemon and pyroa. Lemon being the citrus fruit lemon. Pyroa being a place in New Zealand. It's not a food. Don't try and look up pyro and be like, well, what is that flavour? It even says on here, good lemony stuff. It's really New Zealand's lemonade. It's like their soft drink. And I didn't drink a lot of it in New Zealand. Occasionally I did. I think it was just, you know, because it's always available. You're like, yeah, sure, I'll drink it at some point. But now that I haven't lived in New Zealand for quite a few years, I was like, I really miss lemon and pyro. Don't know why I just call it lemon pyro. It's LNP. That's what you call it. And I've posted about it on my Instagram stories before, but there's a place, like a website called Sansa. I'll have a link below, where you can buy some Australian, New Zealand snacks, drinks, both non-alcoholic and alcoholic, and then just like crisps and chocolate and lollies and all these things. Which is really nice because as I've kind of grown up in different countries, I guess I'll quickly throw it in here. Born in Austria, lived there for a few years, moved to Libya, then lived in Australia, then lived in New Zealand, then moved back to Austria for a while before moving to the UK. But my parents have also lived in Romania and Dubai, where I've also spent a bit of time over like Christmas and stuff when uni broke up. So I've lived in a lot of different countries, experienced a lot of different food, and one of the worst things is always when you leave and you're like, well cool, now I can't get that. At least moving from Australia to New Zealand, you could get most things in New Zealand. But yeah, so I just kind of found that website and finally placed an order, and just couldn't resist ordering some good old LNP. And the beautiful thing is, when they, I think it wasn't always their like campaign advertising sort of slogan, but they always, well not always, I literally just said that, but they started this thing where they said LNP, world famous in New Zealand, and for me that just sums up New Zealand. Just that good old sense of humour. It's absolutely beautiful. If you've ever seen any like Air New Zealand ads, or some of the like ads the government has done for like to make sure you don't drink and drive and things like that, they're beautiful. The comedy is just wonderful. But yeah, so I thought I'd share. If you feel like giving some New Zealand Australian snacks and drinks a go, the Australian version of this would probably be Solo. I'm pretty sure that's Australian. Which is also just their lemonade. They taste very different, but I'll leave that here just in frame to tempt you. I have nothing to offer you if you do order from that website that I will have linked below. Just want to share the happiness, and I'd recommend, if you do place an order, pizza shapes, Arnott's pizza shapes, Arnott's Tim Tams, Arnott's mint slices, and any chocolate from Whittaker's, because they're absolutely brilliant. If you want a really smooth, delicious, creamy than creamy, and the creamiest of all creams of milk chocolates, order their like milk chocolate. I'm pretty sure they have the really good one online. They don't stock everything, obviously, and with the whole pandemic they've had a few issues, I think, with getting some things, but I think most things that are on there are delicious. But yes, let us dive. I think I'm going to finish off with the project and then kind of round it all off with some more thoughts and feelings. So, first thing I want to share is, and here's hopefully an example, I think with the next few projects you'll see, when I mentioned in my last one that not only do I have an obsession with Georgie's yarn from the Fibre Fox, I also love Hayley's yarn from Ducky Darlings. She kind of started the whole love affair of indie dyed yarn. This is my Rifty! If you've never seen one before, it's got this beautiful twisted ribbing at the bottom, which is slightly longer in the back than the front, which I really like. It's worked bottom up, so you do those bits separately first, then join in the round. And like with the Ursa sweater, same designer, you have this beautiful detail down the side as well, which I really love. Ooh. I need to cut that bit of yarn off. I did make my neckline a bit tighter than I wanted. I don't know why I got it in my head that I needed it to be this tight. But I have worn this a few times. I made the sleeves slightly longer, I think, than you were meant to, but that's because I wanted just a bit more. But the yarn is from Ducky Darlings. I did it with DK weight. I think the pattern says you can either use sport weight or DK. And I've got yarn in my stash for another one which is sport weight, but I thought I'd also try DK. I think I used slightly more than 2 skeins, but that's because I made one that's a bit more fitted. I made a cropped and a bit more fitted, but slightly longer sleeves. But this was such a fun and easy knit. It was probably also... Is it the first thing I finished that's worked bottom up? It might just be. But super simple. I will definitely be making another one. I don't, from memory, I don't think I had any problems, but that's because Hilary, so my friend Hilary, who, once again, quick shout out, if you're after some new hand-dyed yarn, check out Her Made Yarn. She only just launched at the end of July, but she's got some beautiful stuff up. I'll have her Etsy store link below. And her Instagram as well, so you can follow her and see what goodies she's got coming up. But she started this first. I think Hilary was also the one who actually found the pattern. Hilary's amazing at finding patterns. I'm just a bit oblivious with all of it. But, so I kind of had heard from her some of the issues she had, so I kept an eye out for things. And I remember we had a few issues, well, I say we. I remember Hilary had a few issues somewhere when you work the front and back separately. I can't remember what exactly it was, so I also knew to be careful and to make sure that this also doesn't get screwed up. So there are a few bits where I kind of learnt through some of, because when Hilary was struggling, I then kind of read through the pattern and tried to help her figure out what was going wrong. And so I'd already kind of read through the pattern beforehand. I typically do like to read most of the pattern through before I start. I know some people say you really should do that. I don't think you have to, but I do it because of curiosity. And I think it makes me feel less anxious. Because then there are certain bits where I read and go, I have no idea what's going on here, bank that, I don't need to know it now. I'll remember to read it properly later. But I just like to have an overview, knowing what's coming next, you know? But that's another thing that I finished, and I had, like I said, just slightly under a skein of yarn left. So I decided, I'll show it off first. It's a bit of a weird one. But this is another Jessie May design. This is her My Little Secret crop top. So she did this during the whole, when lockdown really was a big thing kind of everywhere. She kind of asked like how would people feel about doing a sort of knit along for a design that she hasn't had test knitted yet, and that we sort of all test knit it for her. And I was like, you know what, I'll join in. Because I had some scrappy bits of yarn lying around for a scrappy project. I guess this is my first scrappy project. Well, framework bralette might count as well. But so you can see it's the same yellow for most of the body. And at the bottom here, Hillary, you will recognize this. I dyed up this yarn at the bottom that I used for the ribbing. Hillary hates the colour. I love it. So after Hillary did her yarn dyeing workshop, she absolutely fell in love with it and was like, let's dye some yarn together. And she was telling me like, oh, everyone thinks that making brown is super easy, but it's like really hard. And she was like, what colour do you want to dye up? And I was like, oh, I really want to do some purple and some yellow. And she was like, we can do that. What do I get? Purple, yellow and brown. I like it. And I think it works perfectly with this. The wool at the top here is more of that sugar baby alpaca that I used for the framework bralette that I showed last time. I think it was also just some scrap bits I had left over from a jumper I think I'd made with this. And it just all ended up working out perfectly. I've only just blocked it. I finished this quite a while ago and just didn't block it. I don't know why, I was just lazy. So I'm hoping I can wear that soon. I might alternate this and the framework bralette as like sleeping tops. Or wear around the house when it's really hot, but not too hot that you can actually wear a DK weight garment. So the yarn I dyed up was actually 4-ply, but I just held a double and it worked out almost perfectly. I think I had like a metre or 2 left at the end. Perfect for the ribbing. But yeah, it was a really fun design. I'm not sure I'll make another one because I don't really wear stuff like this that often, but for around the house and everything, it's quite nice. To be honest, I also need to wear something when I go. I've been to see a chiropractor earlier this week and I had no idea what to wear, so I was like, oh, I'll just wear loose but kind of, you know, like sporty clothes, that would be perfect. And then I came in like full length leggings and he was like, please tell me you've got shorts under that. And I was like, no, I've got underwear clearly, but no shorts. And then wore this loose long sleeve top and he's like, anything under that? I was like, other than my bra, no. And he was like, next time please wear shorts and kind of like a singlet. Maybe I'll whip this out and then be like, look at the thing I've knitted. And he'll be like, and this is part of the reason why you probably have problems with your hips and your back. Anyway. But yeah, I don't think I'll make another one. I might make one of her other patterns where she's got like crop tops, but sleeveless crop tops. I mainly just did this because I thought it would be a fun thing to join in on and use up some scrappy yarn, and of course I will get use out of it, but it's just not exactly one of the projects I'd planned for ages and really was like, yes, I really want to make that. It was literally just for fun, and that's fine. And I'm kind of breezing through these, but whatever. The next one I want to show, I can't remember if I shared this already in a video, but I feel like I'm going to show it anyway. So this is my Love Note sweater. I started this quite a while ago. I've had the yarn since last year. So the mohair is from the Fiber Fox, but the main yarn is Fantasia from Ducky Darling. So it's like the jumper that combines my two loves, my two favourite indie dyers right now. And I had most of the lace done and then just kind of took a break from it because I was like, no, Nina, you need to finish other things, and then just let it sit because Georgie was kind of saying that she wants to do a knit along and wants to do the Love Note. I was like, I'll save it for that. I haven't fully finished off the yoke yet, so I think it can count. And I love knitting this. I did cast off the sleeves a little bit too tight, but I think it will kind of stretch a bit as I wear it. Though once again, if you watch my previous video, you will get really sick of me saying, it's been too hot for me to wear these things, and it really has. But it has been blocked, so the lace looks much more kind of open and detailed than I would have if I'd shown it to you previously. If you've never knitted a Love Note, it does have a kind of drop hem, so the front's a bit shorter than the back. I thought that might be a bit annoying, but I actually really like it. It's a very cute little detail that I really loved, but I also love the fact that this worked up quite quickly because it was done, I'm pretty sure, on 6mm needles. So a lace weight mohair, a fingering, well, 4-ply weight superwash merino on 6mm needles, that knits up very quickly. And I made it cropped because I want to wear it over like dresses and things like that. But yeah, so I feel like now you can kind of see what I mean when I was like, it's not just the fibre fox I have an obsession with, very much is also Ducky Darlings. 2 more projects to share, but I think I'll save my favourite for last. And it hasn't been blocked, so it might not come across as nicely as I would want it to. So, the next one, I think I finished this quite quickly, and once again, haven't had a chance to wear it. This is known as the Almena Shawl. So you can see I've got quite a few different colours, and annoyingly, I didn't fully think it through, but I was like, oh, these should all work together quite nicely because, you know, it's all quite sort of earthy tones. But if I'd been smart about it, I could have done like a whole sky fading into what could have been like a tree. I'm still happy with it, but it's just afterwards that I was like, wait, I could have had this amazing story to tell. But I'm pretty sure, yeah, this is where you start with just like 3 stitches. My hair once again. And you just have this pattern that runs across it, which I've got a few mistakes in here at some point, I think 2 or 3, where, oh, I think there's one. It's fine, it happens, and for the most part they're quite hard to spot, but it just grows and grows and grows, and then eventually you do this beautiful ribbing at the end, and I really loved working this. So this isn't actually like proper cable, or is it? Can't remember now. No, it is. Oh, I don't really like cables all that much, I don't find it enjoyable. And I've just been distracted by Pigeon that's sitting on the opposite set of apartments. I'm looking at him, he's looking at me. It's great. I find pigeons fascinating. Anyway. But the yarn I used for this was, once again, just like some random balls of yarn from Wool and the Gang. What was it called? I can't remember the name. I'll have a link below. I'm not even sure if they still make this yarn. But the pattern, from what I remember, it's been a while since I finished this. I think this was one of the first things I actually finished out of all these 26 projects. I think it's Aran weight. And the size of it and everything, I think, is beautiful and wonderful, and it's going to be great when it's a bit colder. To kind of, you know, wrap it around or not wrap it around. And oh, I really shouldn't do this, I'm so hot. It's boiling today. But this was a really fun knit. It's very repetitive, which can be, I need to take this off, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. Some days I loved it, some days I did not. And I do remember, I think it was when I was on my 3rd colour, that it was starting to get quite long and motivation was lacking, but I was like, look, you just need to do 1 more colour. Well, not even that. I was like, the next colour you get to already change to doing this ribbing instead. And I blocked this. You should have seen it before I did. It was all like scrunched together and a bit of a mess. You couldn't see the cable details properly, and the ribbing was the worst. Like, it didn't spread out at all. So this, I think, was the project that really made me go, sometimes you really need to block. I think there's a few bits where you can maybe get away with it. Like, I don't always block socks because I don't have sock blockers, and then it just raises a whole load of other issues. But with any sort of lace or any sort of, if you've got any sort of special details, it really needs it. A lot of those Wool and the Gang ones, I feel like they don't really need to be blocked. The only reason I do is because I took so long to knit them that my tension kind of changed as I became more consistent, because I, you know, just kind of settled. I think with some projects I start out really tight, then I loosen up, and then I finally find a middle ground. But yeah, so this just really pops. I took some pictures of it for my Instagram, which I was really happy with, because I couldn't go out and take pictures because it was like right, I think, after the lockdown had been announced here in the UK. So I just kind of had to make use of the little balcony that I have and a chair, and I'm quite proud of them. It was fun. But I think, is this my first shawl? I think it might be my first shawl. The litmus cowl. No, that wasn't even my first cowl, because the first cowl I did was the one that got me back into knitting. There we go, it's better. But yes, I'm pretty sure this was my first shawl that I ever knitted, and now I've got a lot more on the way. But this is definitely not even an autumn kind of shawl. This will be something I'll use in the winter if I ever get to go back into my office, because the people I share that office with, they're currently just single occupancy. But if we do ever get back to a point where maybe, you know, 2 or 3 people in there, the other people I share the office with like to keep the office really cold, and I'm like, but I like to be warm when I work. So I always have to bring like a scarf or a shawl or a poncho or something to keep myself warm in that office. I think that's why I made that and started it. I thought it would be perfect for that. Boom, pandemic hits, and plans change. I feel like that's sort of the thing for 2020, isn't it? Plans change, and we have to be okay with that. So the last thing that was on that list of 26 projects, I've finished other things since then. You've seen some of them already. But this is like when I started this project, being more like, I want to get the number of knits down. These were the ones that were on the list. Some of the other ones that are still on the list, because obviously there's not going to be 26. You know what, I'll count how many I've shown you today. So there were 16 in total with part 1 of this video. So that leaves 10 more. I have more than 10 projects currently on the go, but I'll get onto that later. But I'm just showing you the ones, like I said, from that original list of 26 that I've finished since I started that project in March. And some of the other ones you'll have already seen. Some of the other ones I think I maybe haven't shown off, but you'll see them all eventually. I like showing off what I've been knitting. But the last thing I have to share, it's going to be really hard to show, but I'll do my best. So this is the collar, this is one sleeve, and then right at the bottom there is the hem. Oh, it looks like on camera like the colour sort of changes. Anyway, so it's a batwing sweater, and it's called the Robin Sweater by Paula Strickt, I think is the person who designed it. Like always, it will be down below. And the yarn for this is exquisite. It's from the Fibre Company, I'm pretty sure. It's like a cashmere and silk blend or something like that. Like, it's lush. And I've been looking for the perfect yarn for the sweater, because it was also one of the first patterns I ever purchased. I actually bought it on Etsy. Once again, didn't know about Rivalry. Same thing with the Aisha top that I shared in my most recent, no, it wouldn't be my most recent, my like 4th video of kind of projects I've currently been working on. I shared the Aisha top, and that was also one of the first patterns I ever bought, and that was also on Etsy, because that's the only place where I knew you could buy patterns from. I think my mum had always mentioned Rivalry, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, I don't know what it is. And apparently I didn't care enough to inquire. I do now, I care very much. But I was in Austria, like I've mentioned many times, over Christmas, and Mum and I went to a variety of different wool shops in Vienna, and this was one of them. And we went there twice because the first time I saw this yarn I was like, oh, it's beautiful, and then I saw the price and I was like, no, I can't do it. Then we went back a second time because I was like, oh wait, the price is for 100 grams. It wasn't, it was for 50 grams. And then once again I was like, oh, it's too expensive. And then my wonderful mother bought me the yarn for it, which I'm so grateful for. And I needed quite a few skeins. It was 50 grams. It's sport weight yarn, which I actually quite like knitting with because it's a bit thicker than 4-ply, but not as thick as DK. It's like a nice in-between. Quite surprised I'd say that. I've bought a bit of sport weight yarn in the last little while. But I really just like the idea of a batwing sweater. It's so hard to show off. I haven't blocked it. That's why I can't like put it on and like show you, and that's why it hasn't appeared finished on my Instagram. Because I just kept putting it off. I think because I'm just worried, what happens if it doesn't look as nice as I want it to when it's finished? But I've tried it on, it fits really well, and she does say in the instructions, like, so for the increases it's fixed for your size, and it's weird because you increase every round. You know, like normally with like raglan increases it's every second round, but you want that dramatic increase, so you need to do it every round. And for the decreases, I'm pretty sure it was the same, but she did say like, this is how many I'd recommend for your size, but try it on as you go. And I didn't want it to be too fitted, and I think I made the body, would you believe it? There is about this much of the body as well that you have to knit, and I think I made that potentially a bit longer. But it does need a good blocking. It was the first time, like it needs a good blocking just to kind of sort the stitches out so they all kind of relax and look more even. But it was the first time I ever did short rows. And I actually got about halfway through them, lost track of where I was up to, the stitch count and everything didn't make sense anymore of what I was meant to do. So I had to rip it back all the way to the collar again and start again. And I think I actually did that on a train. I can't remember. I think I was heading to the airport again. Where was I going? I used to fly all the time. And I had a couple sitting opposite me, and the woman just kept watching me the whole time as I was like keeping track of where I was in the pattern and everything. It was funny. It's a funny memory. But like with everything else, this is too warm to be wearing right now. Definitely for autumn, though this is not something you just casually wear in my opinion. Like this is a special piece, and I have no reason to be wearing special things right now. So I'm saving them up for when, you know, I actually have somewhere special to go. Not that I'm against just wearing special things for myself, but I don't just want to wear this around the house. That's not the kind of item it is. But that was also something that I sort of had to really focus on, because I've been working on it for quite a while, and just I was like, I'd wanted it finished for so long. Like I'd looked at the pattern for months before I finally found the yarn that I wanted to use, and it's just, it was a shame the way that I was thinking to be like, why am I not finishing that? So that's the last item I want to share today. And I guess I'll kind of say the beauty, no. Let's first talk. So I mentioned that considering there are 16 items here, I should be, you know, down to 10 projects, but I've cast on new things since then. But I've also finished some of those bits. You've seen them. Not all of them, you've seen most of them. But when I kind of thought, I didn't have a plan in mind at the start of how many projects I want to have before, you know, I'm like, this is a happy level, this is where I want to be at all the time. I didn't think about that. I was like, I have no idea. I was like, 26 seemed fine to me for a while. I swear I had more projects at multiple points. But I kind of now have settled on the idea of 10. I think 10 projects would be perfect. Because that gives me a bit of variety of like, normally I only really want to have one pair of socks cast on. And if you take that out, and then, you know, in winter time I might have a shawl, a beanie or a cowl on the go, and maybe some mittens. Still only about 4 projects. And then I don't really want more than 2 or 3 jumpers really on the go at once, and have that be spread across different weights of yarn and things like that. So ideally less than 10. Currently I have 12. I did reach 10 the other day, but then I started a project for a friend of mine, which I have talked about, the Cozy Classic Raglan. I started that, and then I also started something recently that you would have now already seen. It's the Jessica Jones cowl. I started that. So then I was back up to 12 again, but I felt okay with that because I could see that things were coming to an end with some of the projects, and the Jessica Jones cowl really came out of necessity because I needed something with bigger needles. I just got so sick and my hands were just hurting too much from like the 3.5mm needles and stuff. So I know it will probably take a while. Like, it was really quick finishing off projects at first because I had some that was so close to being done, some that only needed to be like seamed together and things like that. And then it started to kind of take longer and longer to finish items as I was working on things where I'd, you know, maybe just on the neck ribbing or a bit of the yoke, and that's my reminder that I need to check out Georgie's new yarn collection, which is Sleeping Beauty inspired. I am so excited. I've actually got an idea of brewing in my head of a design where I want to use all 4 of the colours. Future video, we'll get there eventually. But yeah, so I did just want to, I'm okay with the number kind of fluctuating a bit, and that it's going to take a bit longer right now for me to get below 10. Because some of the projects I've been working on, like the Nobu shawl, that's a big project, and, you know, I'm only just about halfway through it now, so, and it's taken me months to get to that point. So it's okay that it's going to take some time, and I'm going to cast on new things in the meantime, but it's just the rate I was casting on, we're going to control that a bit more. I just took a quick break to quickly buy the new Sleeping Beauty like inspired collection that Georgie launched. Like I said, I set a timer earlier and now actually I've gone and purchased it, because I do have a really particular design in mind for a cardigan. I've been looking for the perfect pattern for a cardigan that I have in my head and I can't find it anywhere. So I finally just decided, okay, I need to design my own. I've only ever made one cardigan, but I think this will be like a long ongoing project, but I don't mind that. I'll swatch and play around once the yarn arrives and maybe show that off in a video, you know, take you along as I design my first ever garment. Anyway, back to what we were talking about. So I want to get down to less than 10 projects. I'm not going to really force it, but I have already noticed that in my last few videos I was talking about how I've had this intense desire to really cast on something new nearly every single day. Sometimes I have it multiple times a day, different projects where I'm like, I need to cast it on now. But I've been able to kind of push through that and instead focus on looking at the patterns, deciding on like what yarn I'll use for it within my stash, and just have a bit of a play around with what I've already got instead of kind of immediately going, I have to cast it on now. But I've already noticed by having fewer projects, when new yarn arrives that I've bought, like at Yorkshire Yarn Fest or something, I don't have so many projects anymore. It means that when that yarn arrives, I can actually cast on something new with that. Whereas before, if I did that, then all these other projects would be abandoned, or I'll do a couple of rows and then it would be abandoned. So it was quite cool that I was able to, you know, start the Jessica Jones cowl because it was perfect kind of timing with how I was feeling with knitting with such small needles, and that yarn had only just kind of arrived recently, and I've been looking at projects for it, and this just fitted perfectly. And then there's no kind of guilt associated with it, and because it makes me sad, some of the yarn that I've bought just sits around and hasn't been worked with. And I'll quickly touch on, I'm not really a fan of destashes, because in my opinion, and I have this with pretty much everything I buy in life, if I'm going to spend my money on it, if I'm going to let an item of whatever come into my life, I don't just then want to go, oh well, I've had you for a couple of months or years now, haven't done anything with you, just get rid of you. And I do think they can work for some people where, you know, you maybe have an overwhelming collection and this lets you kind of reconnect with the new stuff, but I don't want to use destashing as a way for me to go get rid of some old stuff, get some new stuff that once again I won't work with. So by reducing the project and focusing on fewer projects, I think I'm actually getting through them quicker. And it means I'm actually able to cast on those new yarns quicker. So I'm not trying to say that destashing is wrong and anything like that. It's just not, it's not for me. It's not what I want to do. I don't want to get into that habit because there's a reason I love that yarn. And if I don't love it anymore, then what I really need to do is reflect on my purchasing habits. Tastes can change, of course, but I'm like, especially with indie dyed yarn when it's quite pricey compared to, you know, the more budget friendly options, I want to make smart choices. So this is why I typically spend a lot more time on Rivalry, though I know it's not going to be, it's definitely not accessible for everyone, but even just looking at some designers' pages, websites, I use Instagram a lot to kind of find new designs and stuff, follow them on Instagram, then go to their website. So there are other options if Rivalry isn't working. It's just sad that Rivalry isn't working for everyone. But I do spend a lot of time on Rivalry. It doesn't cause me issues. And just kind of look at different patterns and then kind of think about what will often happen is I'll buy yarn for, pardon me, I'll buy yarn for a specific project, but then by the time I get around to maybe working with it, I found a different project I like more. And I'm okay with that kind of happening. I don't think there's been any patterns that I've bought and have never worked up. At some point I'll find it. I'm like, if the fit wasn't perfect and I found something else which is going to show that yarn even better and show the pattern, like they both just work together really well, that's going to be better than me going like, no, you've decided to stick, you said this, now stick with it. I'm not going to do that. So it is just nice to start to, I don't know, work through that constant urge and desire to cast on something new. And I feel like I've built some muscles of restraint and moderation, which can always be a good thing in life. Too much, obviously, no, but... And so it's just been nice, you know, when I feel that intense urge to kind of play around with the yarn I have, look through my stash, look through that spreadsheet, and it's nice to almost, you know, sometimes I'll also just open up the pattern and read through it, and then often I'll find something I'm like, oh, actually I don't feel like doing that right now. I'm like, cool, we're not going to cast it on, or I've got no cables free, or I haven't got the needles for it. Sometimes I need those barriers in place to prevent me from going back to my old habits. Because I do want to finish things, you know, a couple of things a month, 1 or 2 things would be nice, and get use out of them. Otherwise I'm just taking up a lot of space, like in my living room with all the projects I've started, and I never get a chance to wear them. And so now I can actually sort of, like, I've started planning and be like, ooh, I'll cast this on in around September, October, so it's ready by the time that we get to those really cold months. And before I would have thought about it and would have probably still cast that project on, but it would never be done in time for when I actually needed to wear it. And I'm also starting to get a better idea of how long it takes me to kind of finish particular items, which is quite cool, because then I know roughly when I have to start things if I want to get it done for another person. So I think I don't want this to come across as, well, one, I don't want it to come across as I'm telling you that 26 projects, 15 projects, whatever many projects is too many or not enough or anything like that. Like, this was my own kind of little journey that I had to go through with knitting, and I just think it could be nice to kind of reflect and collect together all the things that you're working on and see whether, is that making you happy? Do you maybe need to let yourself to have a bit more freedom and have a few more projects, and maybe plan a bit more about when you knit what, so it's seasonally appropriate, but also, you know, maybe thinking about the future. And also, you know, like I've experienced, making sure that you've got a variety of projects on different needles with different sort of stitches, because like I talked about in my previous video, moss stitch can be quite rough on my wrists. So I don't want to have multiple projects with that kind of a pattern. I also, if you've been watching my videos where I've talked about my Nobu shawl, it's a very intense knit. It's becoming less and less intense with time as I get more and more used to the structure of the pattern, but there is a lot going on and each section is very different to the previous section. And I don't want too many of those intense knits. I love those knits because that's where I really feel myself grow as a knitter, learn new skills, improve certain skills, and just get better at reading different patterns. But if I had 8 projects and they were all that intense, I was like, no, sometimes I just need a good old stockinette body to knit. But it's all about balance. I think my first video ended on quality over quantity, and I guess this one is find a balance. Maybe I should start like a whole series where it's just like a key word or phrase and we talk about that. Starting to become a bit life coachy and philosophical though. I think that's everything I really wanted to say. And my spreadsheet that I use is nothing, I think, worth sharing. You know, find your own way of kind of dealing with it. But like I said, I've got one column where it's the name of the project and another column where I just write. I keep updating it, like I check that spreadsheet quite often, especially when I get a desire to cast on something new. I look through that spreadsheet and kind of go, look at all the things you're currently working on though. Do you really want to add another entry? Probably not. So instead I then look through and I go, you know what, I haven't worked on this for a while, or oh, I forgot I only had like the sleeves to go on this project, let's do that. So every time I kind of finish a certain section, I always update that spreadsheet, and then at the end of the month I move on to a new column and copy over everything from the previous month that I was still working on and what stage I was up to, and then keep updating it in that bit. So I can always see where I was at the start of the month by looking at, you know, the previous column and where I am up to right now. And for the most part you can kind of see like as the number of projects start to shrink, but I'm very much at the point now where it's like it decreases, it increases, it decreases, it increases, and I'm hoping I can get that down so it's more like I'm down to 6 projects and up to 9 projects, down to 7 projects, 8, something like that. We'll see. I think it will be a while, especially, like I said, some of the projects I've been working on are long-term ones. Anything else? Let me check my notes. I did write notes for this to kind of prepare. I think I did talk about this a bit, but I cannot describe to you how much guilt I felt and still feel when I look through the stash that I have. The fact that I haven't worked with some of this yarn. That, you know, I keep talking about how obviously it's been clear that I have an obsession with the fibre fox, but the obsession I have with Ducky Darlings hasn't been shown because I haven't started anything new with her yarn, but I have a lot of her yarn sitting in my stash. And also in some ways I think going forward I don't just want to think about, you know, the different patterns I'm using, as in like, is it a jumper, is it a cowl, is it a shawl, is it a top, all of those things. I also want to think about needle sizes obviously, but also which yarn I'm using. I had mentioned that I'm looking at more budget-friendly options, just especially now that I'm getting to the point where I want to start designing my own things. I want to be able to suggest some nice budget-friendly options that I've actually worked with, instead of just going, oh, well, other people have said this is fine. I want to get a bit of a feel for that, because not everyone can afford the indie dyed stuff. But also just to kind of knit with a variety of different indie dyers, to be able to show everyone off. Because like I mentioned in my previous video, the whole thing with supporting small businesses is really important to me. I've got a few friends now who, you know, have small businesses, and I think it's important that, you know, money goes into that instead of, I'm going to do some, I guess, name calling, if you will. Instead of going to H&M and Zara and Primark, and yes, depending on your lifestyle and your budget, your income, all of that, and just your financial situation, those might be the only places you can buy from. But I think a lot of us just kind of go, oh, well, it's cheap, so I can have a lot more of it. I guess we're going back to like part 1 video, quality over quantity again. But what was my one for this one again? Flexibility, wasn't it? Was it? I can't even remember my own like theme to the video anymore. But I hope that gives you a bit of an idea about what I've been doing, what this project kind of is, and maybe, you know, it's something you want to sort of get on board with. I should start a hashtag for this. I've been taking part in the hashtag StashDown2020, but of course that doesn't include yarn that I've bought in 2020, it's all the yarn you've bought before 2020. What shall we call this? Like, project stash down. What's all about the stash down? I'll have a think. I think it could be cool to have a hashtag, because YouTube also lets you use hashtags. I might have a think, and then insert it here for you to see. This is the cool hashtag I decided on that I will now be using as well. So you might see it before this video goes up, who knows. But that is everything. Those are all my kind of thoughts and feelings with this project. And I will say, just quickly, there have been times where I sort of got frustrated. I was like, why do I have to like keep a record of it? Like every time I'd want to start something new and be like, well, you have to write it on the spreadsheet. I'm like, no, I don't. But it's all about, you know, staying accountable, and at the end of the day, I do enjoy this. This does help me stay motivated and have a clear head about my project, and it's not a form of punishment for me. Like I saw the Jessica Jones cowl that was recommended to me. I looked at the pattern, I bought the pattern, and then immediately knew I wanted to use Into the Unknown from the Fiber Fox. And I let myself cast it on because it was perfect. It was exactly what I wanted. And there was no kind of like humming and hawing about like, should I, shouldn't I? I was just like, yeah, your number will go up, but I'm okay with that. And that's how it should be. If I start to think, oh, but do I want my number to go up? Don't cast it on. Obviously you're a bit hesitant about it, and you're probably gonna, that excitement of, you just want to cast on something new. It has nothing to do with the actual pattern of the yarn. You might be a bit interested, but mainly it's just because you just want to do something new. So let's not immediately give in to that impulse and temptation. Let's focus back on the things that you've been working on. You know, pick up a project you haven't worked on for the last few months. That's new now. You haven't done that in ages. It's just about, you know, changing your thinking, your mindset, all of those things can lead to better productivity, motivation, but also just, you know, better mental health, which is a good thing. I think that's where I'll leave it today. I'm sure I'll think of more things that I wanted to say, so there might be a part 3 in the future. You never know. But for now, This Is Where I Leave You. Great movie, by the way. Pretty sure it's called This Is Where I Leave You, with Jason Bateman. Completely distracted here. But yes, I hope you've enjoyed it. I'd love to hear what you have to say, you know, what your thoughts are on everything I've been saying. So if you did if you did enjoy my ramblings, my thoughts, my thinking, my musings, whatever. If you enjoyed it, give this video a thumbs up. Please make sure you subscribe so you can, you know, find out when I've released more of this wonderful content. Eloquence. And, you know, leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought. Do you think it's a rubbish idea? Are you a free spirit who's like, I will cast on whatever I want to cast on? Or are you a bit more like my mum, where it's like one project in, one project out? Well, one project out, one project in. I swear she never really has more than one project on the go. I just couldn't. That's it. I'll catch up with you again soon. Bye.